Hi, my name is Liora. I'm 30, and this morning I signed a contract that changed everything. Not because I wanted power, but because I was finally done giving it away. It should have been a proud moment, but instead, it became the day my cousin struck me across the face, in front of a room full of strangers, and called me what I've always feared I was, an outcast. For most of my life, I stood in the background while she stole my work and smiled for the camera. And every time I asked why, someone would say, "She's just more marketable." Before I tell you what happened when the Tycoon stepped in, placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Touch my partner again and see, subscribe." It's small, but it tells me these stories matter, and keeps me telling more. I didn't expect pain to come wrapped in silk and applause. That day, the boutique shimmered with soft jazz and clinking glasses. The spring showcase had just begun. Spotlights warmed the mannequins like halos, and racks of pastel gowns whispered as stylists moved between them. I stood near the back, smoothing a fold on the blush silk bodice I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting, anonymously, as always. Then I heard her voice. "Liora!" Just my name, sweet and sharp like the edge of glass. I turned, and there she was, Veyra, my cousin, my captor in couture. Before I could speak, her hand cut through the air and struck my cheek. A clean, practiced motion, no hesitation. The room gasped as one. The slap echoed louder than the music, sharper than the heels clicking across marble. I didn't flinch, not outwardly. But inside, something cracked. For a second, no one moved. I felt the sting, but worse was the silence that followed. All those years of smiling while she claimed my sketches, all those empty acknowledgments. In that moment, they turned to ashes. My fingers instinctively touched the silk gown beside me, like it might ground me. But Veyra was already stepping closer, the scent of her designer perfume laced with something colder. "You're just the help," she hissed, loud enough for everyone. An outcast who got lucky standing in my spotlight. The words didn't even sting. It was the truth behind them that did. I had never been more visible, yet I had never felt smaller. She plucked the sketch from my hand, the centerpiece gown I'd spent sleepless nights stitching meaning into, and waved it like a trophy. "My design for the finale. Isn't it stunning?" she declared to the crowd. Applause broke out. Not for me. I tried to steady my breath, but my lungs refused to play along. I could feel the flush creeping up my neck. Everyone saw it. The designer slapped into silence, the girl who didn't belong. I wanted to speak, to scream, but something else caught my eye. A man. Tall, sharply dressed, cutting through the crowd like a whisper against velvet. His gaze didn't search for clothes or cameras. It landed directly on me, and he wasn't smiling. I didn't know him, but something about his presence, commanding, deliberate, made the room bend around him. Veyra's smirk faltered, just slightly. I stepped back, accidentally brushing against a glass table. My hands trembled, so I folded them behind my back. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. What did it say about me that I was more used to betrayal than kindness? The man spoke, but not to me, to her. "Touch my partner again, and see what happens." Veyra stiffened. Her lips parted like she might object, but no words came out. Her eyes darted from him to me and back again. I didn't understand. Partner? Was he protecting me? Or was this just another twist in someone else's game? The boutique had gone dead quiet again. All eyes were on us, on me for once, and yet all I could hear was the rush in my ears and the dull ache in my cheek. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from something else. Recognition? Hope? No. That was dangerous. He didn't move closer. He didn't offer comfort. Just a look, one that said, "I know who you are, but how?" And why did it feel like my life had just changed again? I didn't sleep that night, not from the sting on my cheek. That had faded. It was something deeper. The look on Veyra's face when that stranger, Torin, stepped in, like someone had cracked her polished mask in two. She'd looked right at me, but for the first time, I wasn't beneath her. I was beside someone she couldn't control, but power like hers doesn't disappear overnight. It roots deep, like mold. By morning, I found myself walking. No coffee, no plan, just letting my feet take over. It had rained sometime before dawn, and the streets still glistened. Puddles held the gray sky like secrets. I didn't realize where I was going until I smelled it. The faint musk of aged cotton, machine oil, and damp wood. My family's old textile workshop, long shut down, left to rot. The gate groaned as I pushed it open. The lock was still broken. Funny how some things never get fixed. Inside, the air was thick and stale. Dust hung in sunbeams like ghosts, and the floor creaked beneath every step. I traced my fingers along the wall, over photos that hadn't been taken down. My mother smiling, thread between her fingers. My uncle, sleeves rolled up. And there, barely visible in the corner, 2 girls. Me, in a hand-me-down smock. Veyra 2 steps in front. I stared at that photo longer than I should have. My hands curled slightly, not in anger. In memory. 12 years old. My job was to run patterns to the cutters, check tension on the looms, sketch when no one was looking. I'd spend hours watching the thread spin, dreaming up designs I never showed anyone. Except Veyra. Back then, I thought she admired me. One afternoon, I'd stayed late, hunched over a scrap of muslin with pencil lines still smudged. I'd drawn something new, something bold, sharp angles paired with soft pleats. It felt like me, finally. I was so proud I showed her. She smiled, kissed my forehead. And the next week, she wore it to school and told everyone she'd made it. That was the first time I heard the phrase, "Let Veyra shine." It came from Aunt Maris, quiet but firm. Sometimes it's better to be the shadow, Liora. That way no one steps on you. I wanted to believe she meant it kindly, that it was about protection. But now, walking past the abandoned sewing tables, I saw it differently. The workshop wasn't a place of creation. It was a vault, one that locked me out, even as I bled into every design. A floorboard popped behind me. I turned sharply. No one, just the building settling. Or maybe my nerves betraying me. I stepped over an old roll of fabric, kicking up dust. In the far corner, a rusted filing cabinet tilted against the wall, its top drawer slightly open. I reached for it, tugging hard until it gave way with a metallic screech. Folders, invoices, fabric orders from 10 years ago, nothing useful. But then, something slipped between the metal edges. A scrap of paper, brittle and stained. It fluttered to the ground. I bent to pick it up. A ledger page. At first I didn't see anything odd, just columns, names, quantities, but then I noticed the notes. Some orders listed under my initials, LK, with design codes I didn't recognize, and next to them, another column scribbled in red ink, transferred VK. Why would Veyra be rerouting credits, and to whom? There was a number in the corner. An account? Or a supplier code? I didn't know. But it didn't belong there, not with my name beside it. I stared at that page like it might rewrite itself. My mouth went dry. A creak behind me again, louder this time. "Liora?" I spun. Aunt Maris stood in the doorway, coat draped over her arm, hair pulled back too tightly. She looked thinner, or maybe just more tired than I remembered. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. Her eyes flicked to the paper in my hand. "This place should have stayed closed." "I needed to see it," I said, "and I found this." She stepped inside, each step measured. She didn't ask to see the page. She just looked away. "Old business records," she muttered. "They don't matter anymore." "They mattered enough to hide." She didn't flinch, but her voice dropped. "Some things are better buried, Liora." That word again. Buried. How much of my life had been hidden in drawers like this? "I want to know why Veyra needed my work back then," I said, my voice rising without permission. "I want to know why you let her." She hesitated, long enough that I thought she might actually tell me. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then tucked it away like it had never happened. "We all made choices," she said, turning toward the exit. "And not all of them were easy." I took a step toward her. "That's not an answer." She didn't stop, just left the door open behind her. I stood there, the ledger page trembling in my hands. Not from wind, from something else, a current running under my skin, a knowing. Veyra hadn't just taken credit, she'd taken more, and someone helped her do it. The sound of distant sirens wailed through the street outside. I folded the page carefully and tucked it into my coat pocket, heart pounding. One last look at the workshop, the smell of old thread and betrayal, and that photo, Me, smiling at someone who'd already decided I was hers to use. I stepped out into the light, not blinking, not anymore. But as I walked away, a single question followed me down the street. Why did she need me so badly back then? I should have ignored the call, but when her name flashed across my screen, Veyra, I froze. I stared at it, letting it ring once, twice, until the fourth chime snapped me out of it. My thumb hovered. Pick up, and I'd open the door again. Decline, and she'd twist that into silence, into weakness. I answered. Her voice slid through the speaker like syrup. Too sweet. Liora, I've been trying to reach you since yesterday. Since she slapped me across the face in front of a room full of people, she meant. You have nerve, I said quietly, stepping onto my apartment balcony. The city lights below flickered, cold and unbothered. The air carried a bite, or maybe that was just me. She sighed, just loud enough. Practiced. I overreacted. You know how pressure gets to me. The launch, the press, the expectations. I shouldn't have lashed out. I didn't respond. My fingers tightened around the iron railing. Look, she continued, I need your help. Of course she did. I'm preparing the gala collection, she said, voice lower now, coaxing. Something fresh, something daring, like only you can do. I nearly laughed. You want me to design it? I said. No, I'll still present it, she replied, as if clarifying a misunderstanding. But I want your touch, your lines. They have that magic. Magic, right. That same magic she stole and stitched her name onto year after year. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. Why now? I asked. She hesitated, just a flicker. Because I need you, she said softly, and because you deserve to be seen, finally. The words were almost tender, like she believed them, like I wanted to believe them. But the truth curled beneath her voice like smoke, intoxicating but toxic. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just hung up and sat down on the cold metal chair behind me, legs shaky, pulse drumming. I looked out across the skyline, 1,000 windows glowing like open eyes. Was one of them hers or his? I thought about Torin, his voice, the way he'd spoken up in that boutique like I mattered. I still hadn't seen him since. Not properly. Not to ask why. Not to ask what he meant by partner. My phone buzzed again, a message this time. I'll pay you double. Just sketch something for me tonight, please. Veyra. I stared at it, then slowly placed the phone face down on the table. My hand lingered, trembled slightly. She always knew the right words, not because they were true, but because she knew which version of me they worked on. The loyal one, the hopeful one. I took a breath, then another, and found myself at my drafting table before I realized I'd moved. The desk lamp buzzed to life, casting a warm cone of light across the blank page. My fingers hovered over the pencil. She doesn't deserve this, but it was mine. The shapes in my head, the folds, the tension, the asymmetry, they needed a home, and paper was the only place that didn't lie. I drew, not for her, for me. By midnight, there were 3 sketches, sharp, elegant, daring. My signature tucked in the margin, LK. For once, I didn't erase it. I sent photos of them, no caption. Seconds later, she replied, Perfect. I knew I could count on you. Come to the studio tomorrow. Let's make it official. The studio, her domain, her throne. I didn't want to go, but part of me needed to look her in the eye. She greeted me in heels that clicked like threats and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my rent. Her arms opened like we were old friends, or sisters who hadn't been torn apart by ego and greed. I didn't hug her. Come in, she said breezily. I've already cleared space for you. The main room smelled like lavender and dry-cleaned wool. Mood boards plastered the walls, but none of them were mine. My sketches lay on the center table, enlarged, printed, surrounded by assistants murmuring approval. My stomach turned. Everyone's obsessed, she said. You're a genius. I stayed silent. She circled behind me, her voice lowering. You'll finally be seen, Liora. You'll have credit, exposure, maybe even a write-up. I turned slowly. What do you mean by credit? She blinked, paused. Well, I'd mention you in the designer notes, as a creative contributor. I clenched my jaw. Not co-designer? I asked. She tilted her head, smile thinning. Let's not get into labels. We both know the industry. The words dropped heavy, but I didn't show it. I didn't breathe. She stepped closer, her perfume cloying. I could tell them you refused, that you're bitter, jealous. I could, Liora. And there it was. The mask slid off. You're threatening me? I said, voice barely above a whisper. She shrugged. I'm giving you options, and if you really want out, fine. But then I suppose it's time you knew. She stepped back, arms folded. I've been keeping something from you. A family matter. Something you probably wouldn't want the press hearing. I stared at her. My skin prickled. What are you talking about? A long pause. She smiled, tight and cruel. Walk away, and I'll tell them first. Help me, and maybe I'll finally let you in. The room spun slightly. I steadied myself on the table edge. She turned on her heel and walked toward the back office, heels slicing the silence. My fingers brushed the edge of the sketch closest to me. Mine, all mine, but held hostage by someone who twisted every gift into a chain. I stood there, surrounded by my own work, wondering which part of me she hadn't stolen yet, but deeper still, a flicker of fear. What secret did she think she had? And why did it feel like the price of finding out might be worse than staying blind? I didn't go back to the studio the next day. I told myself I needed rest, time to think. But the truth was simpler. I was afraid, not of Veyra's threats. I'd lived under those for years. No, I was afraid of what might happen if she didn't lie this time. What if she really did know something about me, something buried so deep, even I couldn't name it? That thought wouldn't leave me. It followed me back to my apartment, curled up next to me like a weight I couldn't shake. And by morning, it had taken shape in my chest, a sharp, aching pull toward the past, toward the workshop. I hadn't planned to return so soon, but something gnawed at me. The ledger page, the one I found in the old cabinet days ago, the one that listed my designs under her name, with numbers and notations I still couldn't make sense of. I needed answers, real ones. So I went back. The workshop looked smaller in daylight, duller. The windows were crusted with years of grime, and the front sign hung askew, half the letters faded or gone. My boots crunched on broken tile as I stepped inside. The air smelled like mildew and rust, and something faintly floral beneath it, like old perfume trapped in wood. I headed straight for the back. That's where they kept the locked storage bins, one for archived files, the other for finished design sheets no one ever used. I pried the first one open with a metal ruler. Dust exploded into the air. Inside were folders, wrinkled, yellowing, water-damaged. I flipped through them one by one. Orders, inventory, tax records. Then, a familiar edge, the red ink. I pulled the sheet out carefully. It was a copy of the ledger page I'd already found, but this time it had more. A second page, stapled behind the first, slightly torn at the corner. It showed transactions, not just for fabrics, but for payments. Dollar amounts, dates, initials, mine. Except I'd never received any of this. Next to each entry was a transfer note, all rerouted to an account ending in 9437, always under the name VK. My throat tightened. Veyra hadn't just stolen credit. She'd been getting paid. With my work, my name, my identity, and I hadn't seen a cent. I stared at the pages, heart pounding. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to hold steady. I took photos with my phone, then folded the sheets carefully and slipped them into my tote. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, muffled against the rotted floorboards. I straightened, too fast. My knee bumped a drawer and sent it clattering. The footsteps stopped, then a voice. "Didn't think I'd find you here again?" I turned. Aunt Maris stood in the doorway, coat buttoned high, hair pinned too tightly, her expression unreadable. But her hands, they were shaking. "I needed to check something," I said, voice flat. She stepped inside, not quite meeting my eyes. "That ledger," she said. "It should have been destroyed." I blinked. "Why?" She didn't answer right away. She walked to the edge of the table and placed her hand on it. Light from the window touched her knuckles, pale and thin. "I told your father we should burn the backups after the fire," she murmured. "But he insisted we keep everything, in case... well, in case what?" She finally looked at me. "In case Veyra ever took it too far." The words landed like a slap. I stared at her. "So you knew?" She didn't deny it. "I tried to keep things together, Liora. After your mother died, after the business collapsed, there were too many wounds to patch. Veyra had momentum. The name, the confidence. You had talent, yes, but you didn't fight for it." "I was 12, I whispered. Her jaw twitched, but she didn't apologize. "I did what I could," she said, softer now. "You think it was easy, watching her steal, watching you fade? But what choice did I have?" I stepped back, suddenly cold. "You could have stopped her." "I could have ruined everything," she snapped. I said nothing. Her eyes dropped to my tote bag. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No." She nodded slowly, then pulled something from her coat pocket. A folded slip of paper, yellowed, crisp edges. She held it out. "What's this?" "It's from your father," she said. "He hid things too, not always out of malice, sometimes just out of fear." I opened the paper. It was a partial letter, faded ink, most of it unreadable. But one sentence stood out. "If anything happens to me, follow the money trail through VK. The account is under—" Then it cut off. My mouth went dry. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "What account?" I asked, voice thin. She stepped back. "I don't know," she said. But I didn't believe her. "Why give this to me now?" I asked. Her expression shifted, something like guilt or warning. "Because if you're going to uncover what she's done, you need to be ready for the fallout." She left without another word. The wind picked up outside. It rattled the loose glass pane in the corner. I stared at the paper again. My father's handwriting, frantic, half-finished. The account, the warning, the lies. I pressed the letter to my chest and stood in that rotting room, surrounded by ghosts. And I knew, whatever secret Veyra was holding over me, it wasn't the only one. Because this wasn't just about fashion, or credit, or even money. This was about something much older, much deeper, something hidden in that account. The question was, who else had access to it? I wasn't ready to see him again. But ready or not, there he was, standing in the middle of the boutique like he owned the marble beneath his feet, which, given his reputation, he probably did. Torin Vale. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe it was the way the space seemed to quiet around him, like the room held its breath when he entered. The buzz of hushed chatter stopped as heads turned. Even the playlist faded into silence, the last note of jazz lingering in the air like smoke. Veyra froze mid-step, her heel poised just inches above the floor. The fabric she held slipped slightly in her arms. He looked straight at her. "Touch my partner again?" His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the boutique like a blade. "And see what happens." It wasn't a threat, it was a verdict. Calm, final. Veyra's hand curled around the hem of a lavender wrap dress. Her lips parted, to speak, to lie, to recover, but nothing came out. She wasn't used to people challenging her, not in public, and definitely not with an audience. I should have felt satisfaction watching her shrink, but I was too busy trying to keep my balance. My pulse raced, every part of me aware of the fact that I was being defended by a stranger I barely knew, a stranger who knew my name before I gave it. I stepped forward, not entirely sure what I was about to say. He beat me to it. "You all right?" he asked, eyes not leaving hers. I nodded once. The sound of my own voice felt too large to trust. He finally turned to face me, really face me, and in that moment, I saw it. Not just the confidence or the control, but something deeper behind his gaze. Recognition. But not from the boutique, from something older. A flicker of memory I couldn't quite place. "You shouldn't have come!" Veyra snapped, finally finding her voice. Torin ignored her. He offered me his arm. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, but my legs moved before my brain caught up. He led me outside, where the city felt less choreographed. The wind had picked up, ruffling the hem of my coat and tugging at the strands of hair escaping my bun. A row of string lights above the boutique entrance clicked softly against their cords in the breeze. He stopped beside a sleek black car parked at the curb, but didn't open the door. "I wasn't sure when to step in," he said quietly, "but you looked like you'd had enough." "I didn't ask for help," I replied. He nodded. "No, you didn't." For a moment we just stood there. I looked up at him, then away, unsure if I was grateful or cornered, or both? Why did you say I'm your partner? I asked finally. A smile ghosted across his face. Because you're about to be. What? He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, sleek, embossed. He handed it to me. Inside was a contract, my name, his company's logo, a proposal, full creative control, my own collection, distribution, promotion, funding, and one condition. I would pose publicly as his creative partner, possibly more. Why? I asked again, fingers tightening on the folder's edge. Why me? He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked toward the boutique windows where shadows shifted behind the tinted glass. Because your name deserves to be known, he said, and because there's someone who's worked hard to make sure it never was. I swallowed. The contract suddenly felt heavy. This isn't charity? I asked. He met my gaze. No, it's strategy. Honest. That was worse than a lie. I don't know you, I said quietly. But I know you, he replied, more than you realize. Something about the way he said it sent a chill through me. Familiar, but foreign, like a thread I'd seen before but couldn't trace. Do you know Veyra? I asked. He paused. I know the type, he said, and I know she's not done yet. What makes you think I'd accept this? I asked. Because if you don't, he said, she wins again. I looked down at the contract, my name in ink. The words founder, lead designer, it felt like a dream, but I'd learned not to trust those. Give me time, I said. You have until midnight, he replied. She's already rewriting your story inside that boutique. You get to decide if she keeps the pen. He stepped back, opened the car door, and disappeared inside. The engine purred to life and then faded into the traffic. I stood there, the folder pressed to my chest, heart thudding. Inside the boutique, I knew what was happening. She'd be spinning a new tale, how I cracked, how I panicked, how Torrin Vale just happened to be passing by. And no one would question her. Not unless I made them. I looked down at the folder again, at my name, at what could be mine, if I was willing to risk the rest. The city buzzed around me, but I felt strangely still. I could walk away, go back to my apartment, pretend none of this happened, or I could walk back inside, accept the deal, change the game, but something still lingered, a whisper of doubt. Why did a tycoon like Torrin Vale care so much? And what exactly was his stake in my story? I signed the contract just after midnight, alone in my apartment with the city humming faintly through the window. The folder lay open across my kitchen counter, ink drying beneath my hand like it meant something permanent, and maybe it did. My fingers hovered over my signature a moment too long. Was this a rescue? Or another kind of trap? The paper didn't answer. Torrin arrived the next morning at 9 a.m. sharp. No assistant, no entourage, just him in a charcoal coat and gloves that looked more like armor than warmth. He didn't ask if I'd slept. He didn't offer congratulations. He just handed me a black envelope. Inside, a press release drafted by his team. My name, bold and beautiful, beside his. Torrin Vale announces exclusive creative partnership with rising designer Liora Kane for a forthcoming couture revival project. Rising. As if I hadn't spent my whole life designing from the shadows. We met the press an hour later. The boutique had been cleared, restaged, neutral backdrops, soft lighting, curated whispers. Flashbulbs clicked like nervous heartbeats. Veyra was nowhere in sight, but her absence felt louder than her presence ever could. Torrin stood close beside me, calm and unshakable. I tried to mirror him, but my spine felt made of wire. You ready? He asked under his breath. No, I replied. He smirked slightly. Good. The camera lights flared. I said the words I was coached to say, about collaboration, about vision, about the future. The words came from my mouth, but they didn't feel like mine, until I looked down at the design board behind us and saw one of my sketches, my lines, my name. The applause that followed barely registered. After the conference, we stepped into a quiet side room away from the noise. Torrin loosened his collar and handed me a glass of water. His eyes never left mine. You held your own, he said. I'm not used to pretending, I replied. You'll get used to it. He said it kindly, but it still landed like a warning. I took a sip and stared at him. What's your angle in all this? He didn't flinch. I back winners. That's not an answer. He leaned against the table. Veyra doesn't realize what she's built her house on, and when it collapses, I'd rather stand beside the one holding the blueprint. His words made sense, but they didn't explain the way he looked at me, like he'd seen a version of me I didn't know existed. I pushed. "Did you know my father?" There it was, the flicker in his eyes. He looked away, just for a second, then back. "I knew of him," he said. "That's not what I asked." He exhaled, slow and controlled. "We crossed paths, years ago. Your father was smart, careful, but not careful enough." What does that mean? It means there were people who wanted what he had, and someone close to him helped them take it. The ledger, the letter, the account, Veyra. "Do you think she was involved?" I asked. His expression didn't change. "I think she's standing on buried secrets, and you're the only one who knows where they're kept." A chill passed through me. I set the glass down too quickly, and the water sloshed over my hand. He handed me a napkin. His fingers brushed mine, steady, warm. It shouldn't have grounded me, but it did. Still, something in my chest bristled. This man had all the answers, and yet somehow gave none. That afternoon we returned to the boutique. Veyra was waiting. She stood by the dressing mirrors, arms crossed, lips painted redder than I'd ever seen. A statement, a threat. "Well," she said, voice too sweet, "congratulations. You made headlines." I ignored the bait. "You saw the release?" She nodded. "Oh, I read it, several times." Her gaze flicked toward Torin, then back to me. "Tell me, Liora, how much of yourself did you have to sell to get that headline?" The insult stung more than I expected, not because of what she said, but because I didn't know how to answer. Torin stepped forward, but I held a hand out. I could speak for myself now. "I signed because I was tired of watching you take things that were never yours." She smiled, slow and cutting. "Is that what you think happened?" She pulled a folded document from her purse, aged, creased, stained with fingerprints. "You want transparency?" she said. "Then ask him about this." She handed it to me. I unfolded it. It was an old letter, my father's letterhead, but the signature wasn't his. It was Torin Vale's. I stared at him. He didn't move. "What is this?" I asked, my voice cracking just slightly. "I was going to tell you," he said, "just not yet." The room spun. Veyra's laugh echoed off the mirrors. "Poor thing. Thought she'd found a savior." I couldn't breathe. My fingers curled around the paper until it creased. Torin's eyes didn't leave mine. "Your father and I had dealings, yes, but he kept things from you, things you still don't know. I came to protect what's left." "And what's your price?" I whispered. Silence, then truth. I didn't believe him, not fully, but part of me wanted to, and that part terrified me. I didn't go home that night. I walked, past closing boutiques, dimmed galleries, flickering cafe signs, past the world Veyra had turned into her stage, and I had let her. The city felt different now. Every light had a shadow behind it, every smile, a catch. The folded letter was still in my coat pocket, the ink warmed by my body heat. Torin's name, my father's letterhead. A handshake in the past I had never been allowed to know. My heels eventually took me to the edge of Westwood, where the houses got smaller and the paint chipped freely. I stopped at a narrow porch with an overgrown hedge and a dim porch light struggling to stay alive. I didn't even knock. Maris opened the door before I could lift my hand. Her eyes were swollen. She'd been crying. "I knew you'd come," she said. I stepped inside. Her living room smelled like cinnamon and dust. Family photos crowded every surface, some crooked, some faded. My father smiled from the mantel, eternally young. Veyra and I sat side by side in a school recital frame, our smiles more like clenched teeth. Maris shuffled to the kitchen, came back with tea she didn't drink. I sat on the edge of the couch, stiff and silent. She looked at me like someone peering through a foggy window. "How long have you known?" I asked. Her hands trembled as she wrapped them around her mug. "Since the second season, Veyra claimed your spring line. You were barely 21. "Not just about the sketches," I said. "About the money, the accounts, the lies." She flinched. I reached into my coat and placed the letter on the coffee table, the one with Torin's signature. Her breath caught. I thought that was gone. What was he to my father? She didn't answer. What was he to you? Her shoulders hunched. He was a lifeline for all of us. I stared. She looked down, then started to speak. Quiet, careful, like each word might fracture something inside her. After your father's accident, everything collapsed. The workshop was drowning. Your mother was already sick. You were too young to see it, but we were desperate. Veyra, she was angry. She thought she deserved more. And when your father didn't leave her the business outright. She took it anyway, I whispered. She couldn't have done it alone, Mara said. She didn't know enough. I knew what was coming before she said it. I helped her, she admitted. Not at first, but later. When the numbers started shifting, when buyers wanted names, and Veyra had one. And me? You were quiet, talented, easy to overlook. You didn't fight it, you didn't ask. I was a kid, I snapped. She looked like she'd been slapped. I stood pacing across the rug that smelled faintly of mold. You let her take everything, and now you want to explain it away with circumstance? I was trying to hold the family together. No, you held her together. You held her up. You left me behind. Silence pressed into the room. Then, she threatened to expose something, Maris said quietly. My heart stuttered. What? Maris turned, reached into the drawer of the side table, and pulled out a small metal key. Silver, worn smooth at the edges. She found a letter, years ago, one your father wrote. I never saw the full thing, but I know it scared her. It scared me too. What kind of letter? She never said, but it mentioned someone he trusted, someone outside the family. Torin. She pressed the key into my hand. It's for the cedar chest in the attic, she said. I haven't opened it since he died. My fingers tightened around the key. Its cold edge bit into my palm. Why give me this now? Because I kept the wrong secrets. And if your father tried to tell you the truth before he died, you deserve to hear it. Not from her, not from him, from himself. The attic groaned under my weight as I climbed the narrow steps. Dust swirled through the beam of my phone's flashlight, and cobwebs clung to the corners like regret. The chest was where I remembered it, covered with an old blanket, the cedar wood faded but intact. The key clicked once, then twice. Inside, papers, a watch, a velvet pouch, and at the very bottom, an envelope sealed in wax. My name, in my father's handwriting. I didn't open it, not yet, because something else was in the box, a photograph, old, torn at the edge, my father younger, standing with a man I didn't recognize, except I did. Torin, younger but unmistakable, his arm around my father's shoulder, smiling. Partners? Friends? Or something worse? I took the envelope and photo, climbed down in silence. Maris was gone. Her teacup sat untouched, steam long vanished. Outside, the night had cooled, but my skin burned. I stared at the envelope under the street lamp, fingers trembling. What was in there? And why did the seal bear our family crest, broken, but still holding together by threads? I didn't sleep that night. The letter sat untouched on my coffee table, the wax seal catching every flicker of streetlight that bled through the blinds. I circled it like prey I couldn't bring myself to kill. Every time I reached for it, my hand froze. Every time I looked away, my chest tightened, like the truth inside already knew my name. By morning, the city had turned gold. Sunlight scraped the tops of buildings, warming glass and rusted balconies. My apartment felt smaller, quieter, like it knew something was about to change. I finally opened it just after sunrise. The wax snapped clean, the paper unfolded with a sigh. It was my father's handwriting. Liora, if you're reading this, then the lies outlived me. The first line nearly made me stop. My throat tightened, but I kept going. I never wanted you caught in this, but if you're holding this, then you already are. The letter wasn't long, but it unraveled everything. He talked about the business, how Veyra had always been ambitious, how Maris made compromises in the name of family, how deals were made behind closed doors and payments rerouted to accounts with names he didn't recognize until it was too late. Then one sentence caught me. Torin was the only one who tried to warn me. I stopped reading. That one line threw everything off balance. After all the suspicion, after Veyra's accusation, after the forged signature and the letterhead, my father trusted him. He risked more than I ever did. I owe him that truth, even if the rest is complicated. I finished reading, hands shaking. The last words, "If you want answers, you'll need more than this letter. Start with the one who stayed silent. She knows where the rest is hidden." I didn't need to ask who he meant. Maris. But I wouldn't have to wait long. By noon, she showed up at my door. No call, no warning, just 3 soft knocks and the weight of history standing outside. She looked older than the night before, more fragile. She held a manila folder against her chest like a shield. "I had to be sure you'd found it," she said. I stepped aside. She didn't wait to be invited in. We sat at the kitchen table. She placed the folder between us. "I kept this," she whispered, "because I was afraid of what it would do if it got out." I opened it. Inside were copies of documents, business transactions, checks, emails, all tied to Veyra, all forged in ways that traced back to me. My name, my initials, my work. One paper caught my eye, an old account slip. The number ended in 9437, same one from the ledger page. "She used your father's grief," Maris said. "Said she could salvage the company. Said if I helped shift things quietly, she'd protect your future." "You helped her rob me," I said flatly. Her lips parted, then closed again. "Yes." She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a USB drive. "What's on it?" "The original ledger," she said. "The unedited version, the one your father backed up before everything fell apart." I stared at it. One tiny object, years of silence, thousands of stolen hours. Maris stood. Her voice broke for the first time. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope you'll use that better than I ever did." She left without another word. I sat there long after the door clicked shut. The folder spread open before me, the letter pressed to my heart, the USB still warm in my palm. That night, I didn't go back to the boutique. I went to Torin's office. His assistant let me in without hesitation. The room was dim, all glass and sharp lines, lit by the amber glow of a single desk lamp. Torin stood by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He didn't look surprised to see me. "I read it," I said. His eyes softened. "And?" "My father trusted you." "He did." "Why didn't you tell me that sooner?" "Because I didn't want that to be the reason you trusted me." The room went still. I stepped forward, placed the letter on his desk, then the USB. "This proves everything," I said. "She laundered money, used my name, buried the truth." Torin nodded once. "Then we use it." He moved to sit across from me, leaning in. "There's a gala next week," he said. "Press, investors, all eyes on her. And you." I knew what he meant. Exposure, revelation, revenge. But I wasn't ready to answer. There was one thing still gnawing at me. "Who else knows about that account?" He hesitated, just slightly. Before he could speak, his phone lit up on the desk. One name glowed on the screen. Veyra. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. The dress clung to me like armor. Midnight black, sharp-lined, minimal. My design, cut from the fabric Veyra once stole. It fit too well. Like it had been waiting for this moment all along. The gala buzzed around me. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above polished marble floors. Music floated from the quartet like sugar, sweet and thin. Waiters swept past with flutes of champagne no one really drank. And in the center of it all, my collection. 6 pieces. Mine, labeled under my name. Torin had made sure of that. He stood across the ballroom now, speaking to a board member with one hand tucked casually into his jacket pocket. But his eyes flicked toward me, steady, calm, reassuring. I should have felt powerful, but something twisted beneath my ribs, a quiet hum of nerves. Or was it fear? Not of failure, not tonight. Of what would happen after. A familiar scent brushed past me, expensive rose and something colder underneath. Veyra. She stood behind me, her voice low and venom-laced. "You always did love playing dress-up." I turned. She was dazzling. Of course she was. Liquid silver gown, flawless makeup, a smile that could slice marble. But there was tension behind her eyes, the kind you only see if you've lived in someone's shadow long enough. "I'm not playing," I said. Her smile twitched. "Enjoy it while it lasts. The spotlight gets hot, you know." "I built every thread of what's hanging out there. And I built the audience that's watching it," she snapped. "You're welcome." That was the moment. the exact second I knew I wasn't scared anymore. "You built it on my back, my sketches, my silence." She laughed, light and cruel. "You think anyone here cares? They don't want truth. They want glamour, headlines, a story." I held her gaze. "Then I'll give them one." I stepped onto the small stage set up near the runway. The microphone squealed for a second before the sound tech adjusted it. The crowd hushed, eyes turning toward me in a slow, collective shift. I could hear my own breath. "I want to thank everyone who believed in this line," I said, "and those who believed in me, even when I didn't." My voice was steady. "I designed every piece you see tonight, but this isn't just about fashion." A flicker of movement. Veyra at the edge of the crowd, rigid now. "This is about reclaiming what was taken, about speaking when silence was the cost of survival." Someone gasped softly. A few turned toward her. I opened the folder I had tucked beneath the podium. Inside, the original ledger, the forged payments, the letter from my father. I didn't need to show them yet, but I needed her to know I could. Veyra moved, fast. She pushed through the crowd, voice shaking but loud enough. "She's lying. This is all some pathetic stunt. Jealousy dressed up as justice." I stepped forward. "You stole from me. For years. And worse, you made me believe I didn't matter." "You were weak," she hissed. "You let me." "No," I said. "I trusted you. You chose betrayal." The room crackled with tension. Torin had moved closer, hands at his sides, watching but not interfering. "I have evidence," I said calmly. "Legal proof. You rerouted money, claimed designs, manipulated records, and people. I was one of them." Veyra's eyes darted. Her mask cracked just slightly. Then she did what I feared and expected. She lunged, not at me, at the folder. Her hand clutched the edges before I even saw it move. Gasps erupted. The lights above seemed to flicker. I stepped back. She froze, caught in the flashbulb of her own unraveling. "Security," Torin said, voice sharp, but I raised my hand. "No." I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time, she looked small, not broken, just exposed. She dropped the folder. It hit the floor with a soft thud. Pages scattered. She met my eyes one last time. "Do you really think any of this changes who you are?" she asked. "No," I said, "but it finally shows who you are." She didn't reply. She turned, walked out. No one followed. The room remained quiet for a beat longer. Then, applause. It wasn't loud, not at first, but it grew, honest, raw. I stepped down. My knees trembled slightly, but I didn't fall. Torin met me halfway. "You did it," he said. "No," I whispered. "I started it." But as I looked back toward the stage, something tugged at me. A woman from the catering staff, maybe early 40s, short hair, plain black blazer, stood near the edge, watching me, not clapping, not blinking. When our eyes met, she turned away quickly. My stomach dropped. Torin saw the shift in my face. "What is it?" "I don't know," but I had a feeling. This wasn't over. The gala ended, but the echoes didn't. They trailed me down the hotel hallway and into the elevator. Every closed door I passed felt like it hid a version of me I had outgrown. The quiet girl, the obedient niece, the invisible designer. But when I reached my suite, something in me refused to open the door right away. I needed air, answers, stillness. Torin found me on the rooftop balcony 30 minutes later. The city buzzed below us, glittering like a sea of secrets. My dress had slipped slightly off one shoulder and I didn't fix it. Let it fall. I didn't need armor anymore. "You were brilliant," he said, approaching slowly. "She was humiliated," I whispered. He looked at me. "That wasn't the goal." "No," I said, "but it was the truth." I held up the photo, the one from the attic, my father and Torin, smiling like brothers. "You lied to me," I said, voice soft but sure. Torin exhaled. I withheld. "Same thing." "I was protecting what he didn't finish," he said. "Your father left a legacy. Veyra tried to bury it, but it's not just about designs, Liora." I turned toward him. "Then what is it about?" He reached into his inside pocket and handed me a folded document. Legal paper, heavy cream stock, crisp lettering, my name. At the top, amendment to the last will and testament of Elias Kane. I froze. "This isn't real," I said. "It is," he replied. It was never filed, but your father had it notarized days before the accident. I scanned it. My hands trembled. The Kane estate, the workshop property, 2 offshore accounts, all in my name. Not Veyra's, not Maris's, mine. I looked up at Torin. My throat burned. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Veyra bribed the executor to bury it, he said. Your aunt signed off to keep the peace. The betrayal coiled inside me again. Cold, familiar, precise. I thought I'd felt its full sting already. I was wrong. I don't want her money, I whispered. It was never hers, he said. He stepped closer. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about restoration. Why do you care? I asked. Torin's expression softened, then shuddered. Because your father once saved me, he said, from a deal I couldn't back out of. He gave me a second chance. I couldn't repay him then, but I can protect what mattered to him now. I didn't know what to say to that. I stepped back, trying to breathe. The air felt different, charged. Below us, I saw the woman again, the one from the gala, same black blazer, same silent stare. She stood on the curb, phone to her ear, eyes flicking up, straight at me. I blinked, but she didn't look away. Torin, I murmured. That woman. He followed my gaze. His face paled just slightly. That's Liora Marvin, he said. Corporate auditor, private, not easily bought. Why would she be at the gala? He didn't answer. My phone buzzed in my hand. Blocked number. I answered anyway. A woman's voice. Smooth, precise, clipped. You opened a sealed file that wasn't meant for you, Ms. Kane. My heart lurched. I'm sorry? You'll receive a formal notice by morning. Do not destroy what you've been given. Do not speak of what you found in the file drawer marked 9437. She hung up. I looked at Torin. What the hell is happening? He took my phone, scanned the screen, then looked down at the city again, like it might offer a solution. That account, he said. It wasn't just about stolen money. It's tied to something else. A trust. A holding entity your father created before he died. Why? Because he didn't want Veyra to touch it, and because someone else had their eye on it. A wind swept across the rooftop. I wrapped my arms around myself. Torin pulled out a second document from his coat, thinner, more cryptic. It was an ownership chain, a shell company, traced back to the same account number. But the last line stopped me cold. Majority silent partner, Liora Marvin. I looked at him. She was working with my father? She was investigating, he said, but she went dark after he died. No one ever heard from her again. Until now. The city roared below us. I clutched the amended will to my chest, my pulse ragged. What does she want? I asked. Torin shook his head slowly. Not justice, he said. Control. And suddenly, I understood. Veyra wasn't the only one playing games. Someone else had been watching and waiting. The next 48 hours moved like silk through a needle, smooth on the surface but razor sharp underneath. I barely slept, barely ate. My mind replayed everything, the letter, the will, the threats. But beneath the whirlwind of documents and whispers and warnings, one truth held steady. It was time. Time to end the cycle. Time to reclaim what was always mine. The final show was scheduled for Friday night, a press-heavy, investor-filled event hosted in a glass-walled showroom downtown. The theme? Legacy rewritten. Fitting. Torin's team had done their part. Legal groundwork was in place. Journalists had been fed just enough, and I had one last move left. I arrived before the doors opened, stepping into a room flooded with light. My new collection hung along the runway. Every piece a scream I had once silenced. Tailored rage, sculpted forgiveness. Veyra was already there. She stood near the refreshments, wineglass in hand, dressed in bone white, like innocence. Her eyes landed on me, and something flickered. Not fear, resignation. Congratulations, she said, voice even. I approached slowly, my heels deliberate against the tile. You should leave before it begins. She tilted her head. You know I won't. You're not the story anymore. Her smile returned. Just barely. That's what you think. Before I could speak again, the room shifted. The lights dimmed. Music pulsed. The show had begun. I stepped backstage as the first model took the runway. Silence fell. The crowd leaned forward. My heart pounded. I watched my work move, not stolen, not hidden, but seen. Piece after piece glided forward, the midnight suit with the inverted seams, the crimson silk draped like spilled truth, the finale dress, sheer, layered, deliberately raw. The audience stood before the show even ended. Applause thundered, but I didn't go out. Not yet. Instead, I stepped onto the stage 5 minutes later, in my own design, plain black, no jewelry, no branding. I didn't need armor anymore. I took the mic. Tonight's show was more than fashion, I began. It was a reclamation. I held up a folder. Not for drama, for clarity. Years ago, my work was taken. My name was erased, and my family stood by. A murmur spread through the room. I saw Torin in the crowd, calm, nodding once. But then, a figure stepped forward. Veyra. "I have something to say," she called out, her voice louder than I expected. I turned, spine straight. "Let her speak," someone said. She climbed the steps slowly, eyes locked on mine. "You want to talk about stolen names?" she said. "Let's talk about what else our father left behind." The crowd hushed. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Giving them the truth you're too afraid to share." She pulled a document from her bag and held it up. A birth record. The room tilted. "Elias Kane wasn't just your father," she said. "He was mine too." Gasps. My breath caught. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." She nodded. "Half-sisters. That's what your mother never wanted you to know. That's why she hated me. Why she never let me in." The twist hit like a body blow. The silence that followed was thick, smothering. "Why now?" I asked. "Because you took everything from me. Credit, legacy, love. At least now they'll know the blood was never yours alone." I stepped forward. "Blood isn't legacy," I said, "and it doesn't buy redemption." She flinched, but I wasn't done. I turned back to the crowd. "You've heard her truth. Now here's mine." I opened the folder. Inside, the full amended will, the account records, the signatures, the timeline of fraud, everything. "I won't press charges," I said. "Not yet." Another murmur. "But I will take what's mine, every thread, every stitch, every shadow you tried to stand in." Veyra said nothing. She didn't move. Then softly she asked, "Was I ever enough?" The question stunned me, and for a second, just a breath, I saw her not as a thief or a rival, but as a girl who once stood beside me in our grandmother's workshop hoping to matter. "No," I said, "but neither was I." She turned, and this time when she walked out, no one followed. The crowd erupted again, louder, rawer. I looked down at the folder in my hands, then up at Torin. He mouthed something across the room. "Now you're free." But I wasn't, not yet, because in the back row, behind the lights, Leona Marvin watched silently, and she wasn't clapping. The day I reclaimed my name didn't end with applause. It ended with silence, not the kind that hurts, the kind that heals, that wraps around your bones and says, "Now it's yours." The boutique was gone. So was the facade. What remained was the truth, raw, unpolished, and finally mine. A month later, I stood on the second-floor balcony of Torin's estate. Below, guests mingled on manicured stone, glasses in hand, voices soft but alive. Spotlights danced off the terrace's edge, illuminating the open courtyard where my new line was being unveiled. But I wasn't down there. I was up here, watching, not hiding, choosing. Torin appeared beside me, quiet as always. "You sure you don't want to make a speech?" he asked, sipping something amber. I smiled, chin resting against the balcony rail. "They've heard enough speeches," he nodded. "Leona?" I asked softly. He sighed. "Gone. For now." She'd disappeared after the gala. No lawsuit, no follow-up. Just a quiet vacuum where threats had once lingered. But the audit trail she left behind, the one connecting the 9437 account to Veyra's shell companies, was undeniable. The inheritance was secure, officially mine. Still, I hadn't heard the last of her. I could feel it, but I no longer feared it. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Helping my father?" Torin looked out at the crowd below. "No, but I regret not protecting you sooner." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the original sketch, the one Veyra once stole. the gown with the asymmetrical hem and twisted collar, drawn in pencil, smudged with age. "I used to think this was the best I'd ever do," I said. He studied it, then looked at me. It was a blueprint, not a destination. I let the sketch go. The breeze caught it, carried it over the balcony, let it drift down into the garden. Below, someone called my name. Torrin stepped back. Let me choose the moment. So I walked down the stairs. The lights found me, not because I chased them, but because I no longer had to. I stood beneath a simple black awning, facing the people who had doubted, dismissed, or watched from the sidelines. And I told the story. Not the betrayal, the becoming. I told them how I found my voice buried under someone else's applause, how I learned that sometimes power isn't in being loud, it's in being undeniable. I showed them the signed will, the unsealed account, the evidence Maris had handed over before leaving the country for good. I gave them every name, every number, every lie, not out of vengeance, out of clarity. Veyra didn't show, but she didn't need to. Her silence was her confession. Torrin's lawyers had negotiated a private settlement. She forfeited all claims to the estate, the brand, and the workshop. She kept one thing, her name, and that was punishment enough. When the crowd thinned and the flashbulbs faded, I stepped into the showroom alone. The mannequin stood beneath soft white light. My name, Liora Kane, gleamed in brass above the entrance. I reached out, touched the edge of the final dress. The fabric was warm. For the first time in years, I let myself feel everything. The weight I carried, the years I lost, the girl I once was. And then, I let it go. Because this wasn't about retribution anymore. It was about legacy. And mine didn't start with Veyra. It started the moment I chose to stop asking for space and built my own. I learned that silence can be survival, but truth is freedom. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is be seen, completely. So if you've ever been erased, underestimated, or made to feel like a ghost in your own life, I see you. Keep going. Don't just reclaim the spotlight. Redesign it. Before you go, if this story spoke to you, subscribe to hear more untold truths. Like this video if you've ever rebuilt yourself. Comment with your own journey. I'll read every word. And share this story if you believe legacies should be earned, not stolen. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.